My challenging goal with this podcast is to provide a library that will help you reach your challenging goals. I want to bring guests with inspirational stories to help you take that first step towards your goal. All I'm asking is to please subscribe to this channel. It helps more than you can ever imagine. Thank you. Ruth, I am very excited to have you here today. I know you a little bit, and I know we're going to have a wonderful conversation about your journey from depression to accessing peace. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
I was wondering if you can take us back to where did this journey to access that peace begin?
Yeah, I can start from the time when I didn't have access to the peace. And growing up, I was a painfully shy, anxious, and overly afraid child. I would kind of hide behind situations, hide behind my mom. I often had a really overactive nervous system, so I was tense a lot and developed stomach issues because I was constantly stressed. And I just had this underlying layer of fear of the unknown, fear of my life ahead being more struggles, more problems, more hardship, and afraid of who I was, who was around me. And I developed these coping strategies or mechanisms. I aimed to be perfect, always trying to get 100% on tests or be seen as like the brightest, most creative student. I loved being teacher's pet. I was a people pleaser, always saying yes to things, even though internally it felt like a resounding no. I avoided conflict. I was the person trying to get in between fights to diffuse situations. And I just kept on putting on these layers of masks of who I was expected to be by my family, by my friends, by society. And the pressure to be something other than who I was, or who I was not, was getting so heavy, so dense, so difficult that I just couldn't take it any longer. And I decided to move out of my hometown when I was going to university. And for me, this was this idea of having a clean break, leaving what I thought at the time were my problems to start a new chapter of life. And I saw this leaving of home as my savior or my heaven or saving grace, until I realized that all of my problems just followed me wherever I went. And the first year of university, I was in my early 20s, and I went to therapy for the first time. And this was really the first opportunity that I felt safe to be who I was, to unravel the pain and the sadness and what was underneath these masks that I was wearing. And I remember my therapist, her name was Tracy at the time. She asked me, "Ruth, what is it that you really want from life?" And it took me a moment. I had to just really sit with that moment, because for so long I had been focused on what I didn't want and focused on my own turmoil and suffering. I never even considered that another possibility was available to me. And then in the moments, I honestly was like, I want to feel peace at all times. And she said, well, at all times is not realistic. But for me, I was surprised that I uttered those words, because that sparked this lifelong journey of finding inner peace and accessing it at all times.
So even though from the outside it looked like you got the results, If you strive for 100% and you got it, it seemed like you had it all together. But then inside, not honoring who you really were, not giving yourself the freedom to show up as Ruth,
Mm-hmm.
that created a lot of a war inside that was not necessarily visible the outside, but that war inside slowly created a difficult place to be.
Absolutely.
In that moment, you were able to say out loud your intention. For the first time, you thought about accessing peace, and peace is what's missing. What happened next?
Mm-hmm. My therapist led me on this journey of reading self-help books alongside being this guidance in words and how to navigate the mind, the thoughts, the past to resolve it and bring hope and potential for the future. And she recommended The Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown because I was struggling with
Mm.
perfectionism and realizing the underpinning for me and in the book is that this belief that if I'm good enough, if I'm perfect enough, then I will belong and then I will be loved because love is what I desperately wanted, to belong and to be loved. And in my search for self help books, I stumbled upon The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, and that transformed the trajectory of my life because the message is so simple and profound, yet often overlooked, especially for myself, which is that this moment, right here and now, is all that we have. And the past is simply created in our minds in the moment, and same with the future. The future is the projections of what we believe, but we're all just experiencing this in this moment, and there's such a deep peace to that.
I want to go back a little bit to your feelings, how you were feeling. So I'm just curious, how did depression show up for you? I know that you were striving to be somebody that you were not necessarily like that was not necessarily connected 100% with who you are. But what were some of other symptoms that you were experiencing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what you mentioned about that inner war really resonates. And for so long, I actually, this is a bit of a sad story, but a little while ago, I was looking through my journals and just my personal childhood items, and I saw I was about 9 or 11, and just the writings. I was so sad. I didn't want to live, and I drew pictures of me actually trying to kill myself. And when I saw that, it was
Mm.
so frightening at that point, such a young age, that I didn't want to live. And so there were days later on when I was in school and lived further away from family that I just didn't get out of bed because I had no reason to. And I developed this strong self hatred, like hating everything about myself, my body. I wasn't thin enough. I wasn't beautiful enough. I spent hours just like picking the hairs from my body to be smooth and beautiful. I also, in middle school, started to self harm. So I began to cut myself because I, in a way, was punishing myself because I really hated who I was, hated who I have become, how I treated people. And I was crying for help at the same time. I wanted someone to save me because I didn't know how to get out of this hole that I was in. So it was a lot of despair, a lot of hopelessness, a lot of anger, blaming people, blaming my family, blaming society, all of that.
Thank you so much for sharing so vulnerable. It's important to see everybody deals with it in different ways. But that feeling of not being yourself, that feeling that I'm living a life not worth living. There is nothing out there for me, not being able to see that. It's important to pay attention to that voice and see if you can find a ray of hope.
Absolutely.
Ruth, so you started on this journey to learn about the presence, the power of the present moment. What would you say were some critical stepping stones, critical moments that helped you make that peace inside yourself?
Yeah. For sure, the beginning for me was going to therapy for the first time and reading that book. That was just like the spark of hope that I had not known until that point of my life. And this was around 2010. And then, and really like developing, like I can experience life in this moment. And there's pockets of time or gap where my mind quiets because I'm in awe of nature or really in the zone of what I'm doing. And there's access to this peace and this calm. So, really playing with that. And then in 2014, I had another wake up call. A childhood friend got into a fatal accident and passed away. And on the same day, my grandpa got admitted to the hospital and never got out. And in those moments, these two instances happening on the same day, I realized that my life was impermanent, that one day I was going to die. And although I had for so many years wished that I would die, at this moment, I felt fear. And I realized I wasn't living the life that I wanted. I had become successful outwardly. I was an accountant. I was living in Toronto, I think at the time, in a nice condo. I purchased bags and clothes and went to nice restaurants. I traveled, and yet I was so unhappy. So that was a spark. And then the next 2 years, I fell into a deeper depression. So I had struggled with drugs since I was 16, and I partied more, I smoked, I drank, and I was just so intoxicated, numbing myself from this life that I was living and so unhappy with. And I remember a moment when I was living in Toronto, and this I think was rock bottom for me. I had struggled to leave bed. I just like didn't want to leave bed. And I remember the place that I was living in Toronto, and this is very common in some places in Toronto where you get bed bugs. And there's even like a website where you can
Mhm.
find the locations of where the bed bugs are because it's so overpopulated. And I remember the place that I was living in had bed bugs, and I was laying in bed, probably high, getting bitten by bed bugs. And I just like didn't, I was so numb. And I was like, is this what my life has come to? Like, I don't even want to leave and I'm getting eaten by bed bugs. And I realized like, I can't live this way because I'm going to destroy my life. And so I quit my job. I left the accounting world and I booked a one-way ticket to India. And I didn't know what I was moving towards. I just knew that I had to get the heck out of my current situation because I was going to destroy myself. And when I went to India, I found Vipassana, which is a 10-day silent retreat, also called insight meditation. And for 10 days, you're meditating 10 to 12 hours every day in complete silence. all your things are taken away from you, and you live in this place and they feed you, and you completely concentrate on going inwards, being in the moment, and discovering the peace that comes from accepting what is here now. And then after my first Vipassana in 2015, I spent the next 2 years seriously committing to going inwards, to healing the wounds, understanding like where are these patterns and habits coming from. And once I discovered them, how can I forgive what needs to be forgiven? How can I apply compassion to the people who I thought wronged me, who are also suffering? How can I love myself and let go so I can be free? And after that deep time in meditation, I also took 4 more long Vipassana courses because I was really committed to the practice and the path. I started farming and connecting with community and living out my values of being closer to the earth, of taking care of this like precious life that we're given, and connecting with like-minded humans that support each other on the path, so that I know that I'm not alone in this like really different life than what I thought I had to become or I had to live.
Wow. So then the first step was getting to a therapist. That started the journey. And then you just deciding to go to India. I'm just curious, Ruth, in that moment when, like, what supported you? So I know a little bit about meditation, that it helps you connect with yourself, helps you have that self-reflection. Maybe you would know more, but I'm just curious, what gave you the strength, what mindset, what new thoughts gave you the strength in order to be able to even consider forgiving, having compassion, understanding?
Yeah. I was fortunate to grow up in a religious household that taught about peace and forgiveness and something so much greater than just like the I self. And within that, there's this real desire to serve others, to love your neighbor, to help others the best way that we can. And I always took those principles with me, knowing that there's something greater than me that's taking care of me, that's supporting me. And I was always connected, even amongst the turmoil and the sadness, to this like shadow of love, that when I was with someone, helping someone, connecting authentically, there was this like energy within me that knew that this was the path that I wanted to be on. And so as I walked through the darkness, I always was connected with that light, that I'm here to serve, I'm here to contribute something meaningful, and that I want to make the world a better place.
What was the first moment, or a moment that you remember, that you felt that this is working? Like, I am seeing that hope. I am sensing that peace.
It's a great question. I would say for me, I had struggled with drug addiction for many years. And it's funny because the first in India, marijuana is like very illegal. And somehow I got a joint from someone that I met the day before doing my first Vipassana course. And of course, in the center, you can't smoke or do drugs. And I remember on the very last day, like day 11, I was still in the center. I had my joint. I had like a lighter and I lit up in the outside, but in the actual Vipassana center trying to get high, because after 10 days of not doing drugs, I was like, I gotta do this. And in the moment I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm at a Vipassana center smoking weed. Like I'm so addicted. And then after that, the few weeks leading up to that, I really had to look within on this addiction, which is really like hiding, running away from feeling the uncomfortable feelings and the mind. And when I started to soften this addiction, not by forcing myself or coercing myself to stop, but I really no longer had cravings. I didn't think about it. I didn't need to light up. That's the turning point when I'm like, this is actually working, because I've tried so many things to quit this addiction and I naturally no longer want to, because I feel a deeper peace and calm within.
Wow. So not feeling the need to self-medicate. I realizing that. What would you say was maybe one of the biggest challenges that you encounter in this journey?
Being with the mind. Yeah, being with the mind. And the core of the practice is being with what is. Vipassana invites, like, the focus of attention is on the breath or the body sensations. And even though I'm focusing on the breath or the body sensations, the thoughts are still there. And being able to allow them to be, to accept them, not to fight, control, or stop the thinking, but to really be with all that fear, that judgment, that doubt, that pain, and to hold it all with presence was very challenging in the beginning.
In all that you know about meditation, how do you think this works? Why is it so helpful to just be?
Yeah, there's being with what is, there's this relaxation where I can really soften and rest in the moment, regardless of what's happening. And the beauty of this practice, and I think of simply being as we are, is that we access this well within us of, of peace, of love, of wisdom, of freedom. It's already there underneath the surface. So it's not that we have to like create peace or get it from outside, but we just allow it to naturally arise within us. And meditation or reflection or just being still for a few moments gives us access to that.
So, Ruth, for someone would that walks the same challenges, maybe dealing with depression or other heavy things, what would be something that you would tell them if you were to mentor them, advise them?
I would tell them that they are not alone and that there are tools and practices to achieving the life and the outcome that they desire. And it's the ability to be radically open and honest about one's experience, which is like assessing point A, where you'd like to go, and taking the action steps to get there. And even though it's painful in the moment, nothing is forever. The only constant is change. And as humans, we're constantly changing. And so the past doesn't need to repeat itself when we are present and conscious and taking different actions. And within there's such a vast amount of potential and hope.
That's beautiful. So, Ruth, I ask my current guests what would be a book that, or what is a book that they tend to recommend. Doesn't have to be on the topic that we discussed, but maybe a book that had an impact on your life that you feel would be helpful for somebody else to read. And what I would do, I would send that book to the next guest, not knowing who that is. So what book would you recommend, and what and why?
I would recommend The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. I know I've been sharing a bit about that earlier. And I see this book as, I see some memes pop up and stuff about it. I really see it as the gateway book to personal transformation and sustainable peace. And when I was struggling with depression and navigating the mind, this gave me practical tools, the know-how of how to experience peace directly for myself. And the kind of the traps that the mind tends to bring us on or keep us stuck in, which is focusing on the past or fearing or worrying about the future, and how to remain grounded in this moment so that we can create a new story, one that's more empowering and one that we really want to live.
Thank you. Thank you for that recommendation. And Ruth, what I know is that you didn't stop at your own journey. After you learn about meditation, you became a coach to support people as they are walking their own journey. And I'm wondering what would be the best way for anyone that would be interested to learn more about you, see what you are doing in the world. What would be the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a LinkedIn profile, so that would be one way to connect with me, Ruth Lee, Li. I also have social media, so Instagram would be ruthlee.coaching, or my Facebook page, Ruth Lee Coaching. And I offer inspiration tools on how I can support people in navigating the path to greater peace, fulfillment, and meaning.
And I will have that information in the show description as well.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Ruth, for taking first the time and also being so vulnerable, sharing your journey. And I think it's so important to see how did somebody that really hit rock bottom came up to now feel fulfilled, to feel so fulfilled that they're now out of that abundance, they are supporting others as well. So thank you so much. I honor this time.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking this time as well, Lucia, and for all that you do in offering these inspiring podcasts for people who are navigating different challenges and how they reach their goals. I really love seeing the podcasts and what you're up to in the world. So thank you.
Thank you for the support. I hope this episode gave you some inspiration for reaching your goals. If you found it useful, please hit the subscribe button. This will help me bring you more inspirational stories to support your own journey to point B. Thank you.